Okay, good morning everybody, and welcome to this Fastrax webinar on the upcoming release. Got quite a few new features to go through this morning, so I'm just going to kind of get started right away and just kind of jump right in. Alright, so the first thing, one of the biggest updates we've got is the changes that we've made to the way users work. So I'm going to open up my director here, and I went down into maintenance, and you'll see that the logins tab that you're used to seeing is no longer there. We've removed that. We've combined it with the employees so that all of our employees and logins are going to live in the same place. There was actually a longer webinar done on this already, but I just wanted to go over real quick what to expect as far as mapping and all that to get your director logins and your employees all mixed together. So, as you can see, we have a good number of employees here. Some of these have this cashier number -1. Anytime you see those, if you try to double click on it, or if you try to click edit user, you'll get this message right here that says this login is not currently mapped to an employee and must be mapped before continuing. Would you like to map it now? So you can click yes, and here you can either choose to map it to an existing cashier, or you can just click create new. So for my Fastrax support user, I'm going to click create new, and when I save, I can open up that user now. You see it generated an employee number, and now I can go in and begin editing my permissions. Since I didn't already have a cashier for this login before, you'll see all my cashier permissions, POS permissions, handheld permissions, all of that kind of stuff are all unchecked. So we don't allow them to do anything by default unless you specifically tell us otherwise. So at this point I can edit my permissions exactly as I used to, but they're all kept in one nice convenient place. So you'll notice there's also this option to use permissions from group. I don't have any groups at the moment, which is why that's grayed out. But once we add groups, we can go ahead and add groups, for corporate user, for cashier, for store manager, that kind of thing, and just check that box, assign this user to that group, and at that point they get all the permissions from the group, and they don't have to be managed on a user by user basis anymore. So if I come in here and I edit this one, I'll go ahead and map it to an existing login, because you'll see that we have Mike, who was a director login, and we also have Mike, the cashier / employee. So I can just select to map one to the other, click save, and apologies, I thought that error message was corrected. But as you can see, after refreshing the module, the mapping did work correctly. You have the permissions that they had before, the same POS permissions and handheld permissions, etc., that the employee originally had. So I'm not going to go too much deeper into this. Like I said, there was a webinar just on the user permissions this morning. I just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of what to expect. And you're going to have to do all that mapping, of course, once we get that new version out to you on Monday. So we'll just kind of move right along to the next thing. I'm going to hop over here to house accounts. We've added a couple of new things in here with house accounts. First off, there's this new setting right here. We can choose a house account and set it so that it can exceed the carton count limit. So if you have those carton counts set up, which you would set up over on the carton counts tab, if you have all that set up, you can choose specific house accounts that can go over those carton count limits. Additionally, you'll see that there's a tab here called attachments. We can now add attachments, so if there are specific forms or what have you for for their tax exemption or anything of that sort. You can attach those to the house account so that they're readily available in case they're needed. I'm going to move on up here to system discounts now. For system discounts, there isn't a lot we changed. Actually, there's only just the one thing. So we now have this box here called discount cost, and we can check that on any of our Philip Morris or RJR sponsored discounts. And when you have this box checked, whenever you run reports and get sales for those discounts, it will actually subtract that discount off of the cost as well as the price, and that can give you some more accurate margins if you're trying to run a sales report on manufacturer discounted items. Next up is receiving. So one thing we changed in here, there's actually a setting that allows us to ignore the last used store number. Yeah, reset store number. Oh no, I'm sorry, reset vendor when creating, that's the new one. Reset store number was already there, reset vendor is the new one. And this just does exactly what it says on the setting. Whenever you create a new invoice, instead of using the same vendor used last time, it starts blank and forces you to select a vendor. We also made a couple of changes to the invoice excise taxes. Namely, there is a store-specific option for charging, and I've got excise taxes disabled in my settings here. But if I had those enabled, this would not be grayed out, and you'd have the option to add excise taxes to fees. So that way, if you add a surcharge on your invoice, it would take a percentage of that surcharge based on whatever your excise tax was and add that to your invoice cost as well. And obviously that's store specific, so that if you're in a state that doesn't do that, but you have stores that are in a state that does do that, then you can have it active only for the stores that you need them on. Additionally, there is an option to apply a portion of the surcharge of an invoice to the last cost of these received items, which is, I think that might be a yeah, fees apply to item cost. There it is. Could not see it. Was absolutely blind there for a second. I apologize. So the invoices, fees apply to item cost, and that divides up the surcharge based on what percentage of the invoice cost a given item represents, and kind of applies equally and factors that into the last cost of the item when that gets updated. Additionally, on departments, obviously we have, and that's not going to show until I actually enable that. So obviously we have this department level setting to enable invoice excise taxes. And if you have items in a given department that need to override that, under our additional info link here we have a checkbox to override the department excise tax flag, and then of course once you've clicked override you can tell it whether it's enabling or disabling. Okay, we also have a new change in the vendors, where you can set a minimum amount that an order is allowed to be. So if I set this to say $500 for this vendor, I can then create an order, and the order I create can be any amount but before it will let me close it or convert it to an invoice or send it EDI, it will pop up a message telling me that it's below the minimum amount, and that'll tell me that I need to either add things to the order or put off until I have enough things to add to the order to make it the minimum amount. Jump in here and go to the enhanced loyalty. For those of you using enhanced loyalty, there's a couple of new things you'll see here. There is a button down here called Wizard. And this allows us to find customers with a blank first or last name, names with special characters or numbers, or single character names, and it checks customers that have not been active for a given amount of time. And we can run this evaluation. It'll ask us if we want to scrub the data first. I'm just going to say no to that for now. And it'll list out all of the ones that should be flagged as inactive. So then I can come in here and just say flag checked accounts as inactive to mark all of those inactive. Now as far as scrubbing the data goes, there's also this button here for it, which has a pop-up here that says we'll remove spaces from first and last names and capitalize the names. So if I do that, you can see that my first and last name went from just being capital in the first letter to being capital all the way through. So that gives you a great way to filter out your old customers that aren't visiting as much anymore, but it leaves them in the system in case they do start coming back. Additionally, we have a change we can make in campaigns now, where we can set the maximum number of coupons that are allowed to be printed. So if you have a limited run loyalty campaign where you're only going to give out, say, 5 or 10 free items or 20 discounts or what have you, you can set that maximum here, and the POS will abide by that and won't print out any more than the maximum coupons to the first 20 customers that get them, or however many you put in there, of course. We also have a new loyalty customer statistics report, which may not show us anything. I'm not sure that I have sales data in for any customers. No, I don't. Well, at any rate, that will show you things like the percentage of transactions that were loyalty and things of that sort on that report. In the stores section here, we have this little gear button, which you guys are probably all familiar with. And previously we could already do vendors, discounts, and buy-downs here. We've added the ability to mass assign commission campaigns as well as loyalty campaigns. So you can come in here and check those. Whenever you add a new store, you can just quickly assign all this instead of having to go to each of these modules individually. Up in the dashboard, if I'm going to create a new message, there's now an option here to check all the stores by price book zone. So you can send a message to all stores in your, price book zone 3 or what have you, and that just automatically checks the boxes up in the top. You can see when I check all in zone, it checks my only store up there. And that just saves you a little time instead of manually having to select all the ones in a zone, and allows you to select them a little bit quicker. I'm going to wander back into our settings here. And we have a setting under this Notify tab. So currently, if a store hasn't sent its sales information to corporate in a while, you'll see it up here. It'll turn yellow in the store updates on the dashboard. Here, you can actually set it if it's been inactive for some number of hours. You can tell it to send an email to someone so that they know that they need to look into that and make sure that the computer's on or the internet's active or what have you at that store, so that all of the sales information can get sent up. Now down here in the queue module, we have this ability. We've always had the checkbox for showing scheduled updates, but now when I refresh with that, it actually shows me how many of the updates it's showing me are scheduled, what the oldest and the newest schedule are. And we can actually see that if I come in here and just tell that to be scheduled. Now it says that all 20 of these are scheduled, and they're scheduled for November the 1st at midnight. Alright, so I'm going to go briefly through a few report enhancements, and then we'll hit up a couple of things in the POS. So under our System Discounts report, we have the System Discounts item details. System Discounts item details, the bottom one. We now have the option to group that report by store, which wasn't there previously, of course. Our eJournal report will now include any personal check data from the transaction, so it'll show you the account number, check number, license number, that kind of thing that you put in at the POS side when you're entering in a check. That actually displays on the eJournal report now. We also have a report that is tied to our system discounts. When we come in here and view affected items for a given discount, we can print the items report to actually print out all of the items that are affected by the discount, which is only one in the case of my lonely little discount here, but we do get to see all of the affected items in that report. Our non-sellers report let me actually switch it over to non-sellers. We have an option to include items with zero quantity on hand. Previously, these were all being excluded because, generally speaking, you're not going to be able to sell something if you don't have it on hand. But if you want to see things that haven't been selling that you also don't have on hand, you can select this option to see. In our negative cashier report down here, we have we've added the ability to see tender data on the report for any applicable transactions. So if you see a transaction with a void, you can tell if that was done with cash, check, credit card. Same thing for any returns. Obviously, canceled sales, no sales, things like that won't because there's no tender data to be shown, but that does show on the relevant transactions. We've also added this negative store report, which shows what percentage of transactions were voids, cancels, and returns on a store-by-store basis. So if you have multiple stores, this will actually list out and show, for this time frame, October 1st through 30th, it'll show you we had 10 voids, 5 voids, 20 cancels, 10 returns, what have you. And what percentage of the transactions in that store were voids, cancels, or returns. And it also shows what percentage of the chain that represents. Lastly, we also have our list report for time clock. And we have this checkbox here that can filter the report by people who have worked in excess of however many hours you put in. So you can see how many people are working overtime, how many people are going over their hours, their scheduled hours, that is. And that about wraps up the report side of things. Only other thing I wanted to mention in Director, which unfortunately I can't demonstrate for you today, is we do have Ohio Liquor Board integration, which should be functioning. I don't have login information for this handy, so I can't show you this, but what this does, if you're in the state of Ohio, it allows you to pull down new PLUs, descriptions, and prices for any of your liquor items that are managed by the state. And it also allows you to send statistics back up to them, so auto send and auto pull. And it tells you or allows you to tell it a default item number to put the new, or a default department number to put the new items in, as well as a default margin based on the cost that they send. So yeah, and like I said, I don't have the login credentials for that, so unfortunately I can't demonstrate that, but that is there now. I think that about wraps up all of the director side stuff, so let's go into POS for a little bit. Okay, so we added a new button type. And this was at someone's request, I believe. So the button type is called multiple sale, and when you set it up, you add a digit in here to be whatever the multiple is. And what that does is it basically acts exactly, in this case I put in 3, it acts exactly as if you had pressed 3x before scanning whatever item it is. And it just kind of acts as a quick shortcut, so if you have something that you consistently sell in, a 6-pack or a 10-pack or what have you, you can just put in that button to make things just a little bit quicker there. So I am not going to save my changes. Okay, another thing we have added is Astro Loyalty integration, which literally all the settings on our end are these 3, the base URL, username, and password. And Astro Loyalty is a loyalty program that provides discounts on things like pet food and things like that. So if that's something that you are using or are interested in using, this is where you would set it up, is in our settings under the integrations tab. Another thing we have done is on our price check screen, if there are system discounts on an item, there we go. If there are system discounts on the item, it will show the eligible discounts, the amount of the discount, and the price of the item after the discount. So in this case, the item obviously is $99.29 pre-discount, and then after the $1 discount would be $98.29. We also have some POS settings on loyalty, which will require email address or phone number when adding customer. And we also have, excuse me, we also have the default search type and remember last search type options. And this just tells you whenever you click that button to bring in or to bring up the loyalty search, what it's going to default to. So I can set that to email, and then when I go in and start searching for people, it'll show me that email. Alternatively, you can just use the remember last option, and it will remember whatever the last search you did was. And that way you just don't have to go from, I think it was defaulting the last name before, so you don't have to go through and switch it to phone number every time if that's how you look up, or switch it to email every time if that's how you look up. And let's see what else. We also have, and this actually will go back to director, so I guess there's one more thing there. And this one is kind of director and POS. So we've always had the sales link option, so I could have a given item that automatically sells when another item is sold. What we can do now is we have the sales link quantity, so I can set that to 5. And then you'll see when I ring up the base item, that second item gets rung up for a quantity of 5 automatically. So that gives us a way to manage how many of those are being sold with each one. I believe that is about the end of my list here, guys. So that is what is coming up in the update on Monday. That is, some of you will be getting it Monday. Obviously, some of you will be getting it on the following Monday, which is the 11th. And that about concludes what we've got to talk about today. So thank you for coming, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.